Hi, this is Laura. Welcome to week 5, and we are wrapping up some of our prototype work this week. So here, let's jump into our topics. Week 5 topics: accessibility in UX UI design, the types and principles of accessibility, universal design, simplicity, Occam's razor, and challenging assumptions and biases. And you will have your final prototype iterations due at the end of week 5, and then the overview of the activities are you're going to be really working on accessibility principles this week, doing a new iteration of your prototype, and then doing a peer review of others' prototypes, and then doing a whole class reflection on universal design and some of the other accessibility topics. Again, each week I've been trying to remind you about design thinking, which is the foundation of this course. So we have been spending time in the last couple weeks prototyping and testing and our testing has really been kind of our peer review process. And then this week we're going to be wrapping in accessibility, which is one of my favorite topics that oftentimes we think we're doing it, but I find that once I really spend time doing it, I realize all the areas that I can improve. So I hope you find that during this week as well. So on accessibility, you have a lot of resources this week and wanted to distinguish accessibility from some of the other topics. But in UX UI design, accessibility is a piece of usability for people who interact with products differently. And then your role as a UX UI designer is to approach accessibility as a facet of user experience rather than just a list of requirements. And oftentimes, until we can kind of remove ourselves from the situation and have the prototype or the design tested, we oftentimes don't notice things related to usability and accessibility. So first and foremost, step in is to build an accessible product is to build empathy and install an inclusive design mentality. So oftentimes the things that we do, we're too close to and we don't see that it might not be accessible because we do understand it. So hopefully this week you'll start to gain more knowledge of accessibility and have the opportunity to look at your prototype through that lens. Then accessibility is part of the overall UX UI design. So we've been talking a lot about usability, some of the design elements, including graphic design, and then now we're layering on or looking at it, as I mentioned, through the lens of accessibility. And we talked about briefly accessibility versus usability. So I want to distinguish those two things. They are similar, but usability is concerned with whether designs are effective, efficient, and satisfying to use. Accessibility is concerned with whether all users are able to access an equivalent user experience, however they encounter a product or service. And then some of the types of accessibility issues that you may see or consider are things like related to visual. Oftentimes, there are a lot of people that are colorblind. So if you're using colors in your design, you may want to be thoughtful about people. They honestly don't see the various colors. So be mindful of that. Mobility, auditory, people that might have seizures or learning or cognitive challenges like dyslexia. Ability barriers can also arise for any user when they might be, for example, incidental, like they have sleep deprivation, or environmental, using a mobile device underground. If there's fans in the background, there's lots of things that a lot of people are especially challenged by environmental noise or environmental issues when they are trying to learn. So be mindful of that. We will spend time this week considering the 10 principles of accessibility. I won't read them all to you, but some of them you may hear quite often, like using good alt text that describes images, making sure that you do testing, accessibility testing with real users, and then be aware of your own biases and check mobile accessibility separately. There are a lot of tools and systems that are still not mobile accessible. And then I think, first and foremost, always embrace the all access attitude, that anyone could, in fact, be accessing your design. Additionally, another thing that I want to bring back to your awareness is the principles of universal design. We talked about it at the very beginning of the course, but it is a concept that if you can keep in mind overall, that you will have even better design. So accessibility is a component of universal design. And so you'll see here, like number 1, equitable use, flexibility in use, tolerance for error, something that's simple and intuitive in your design, information that's perceptible to all, size and space, low physical effort, and then tolerance for error. So keep those things in mind as you're doing your work this week. One of the other elements you'll learn this week is about simplicity, which is Occam's razor. It's a concept that suggests that the simplest solution is almost always the best. I think for one of the big learnings I've had in my life is that I tend to do things too complicated initially, and then later I realize I should have done it simpler, and I do it in the simpler form the second time around. So trying to teach myself to be simple right out of the gate. And so using the Occam's razor principles, it encourages us to eliminate unnecessary elements that would decrease a design's efficiency. So you want to be really careful about your design and go, is this necessarily, or do we need all the buttons? Do we need all the text? Do we need everything that we're putting in there? Or is there a straighter path from where we want people to start and go or do activities? So when you're evaluating your design, analyze the elements, and look at your prototypes, remove as many as possible without compromising the function. That will really help with maintaining simplicity. Another element here, and this is from Occam's razor, this picture is, it's easy to, kind of get too complicated. So make sure that you really consider problem solving and continuous improvement in your designs. And that's part of, we've tried to embed that in this course where you're constantly giving feedback to your peers and receiving feedback from your peers. So as you go into this last iteration of your prototype, really think about the problem you're trying to solve, the data that you've gathered, what you've analyzed, the solutions, and then your prototype, what you've done with it, and then how you can make it simple and accessible. Here are your assignments this week. You're going to have for your individual assignment, you're going to do some work with challenging assumptions and developing your prototype iteration 2. You'll do assumptions in your prototype, challenges to overcome your assumptions, and then how to make the challenge a reality. And you're going to do that as well as develop the next iteration of your prototype. So you're going to use the learning materials and resources about accessibility, simplicity, and apply those to your prototype by challenging your assumptions and potential biases. And then, as I noted, you're going to develop the next iteration of your prototype, and you're going to submit that for my review. And then next, you're going to do the small group assignment, which is you're going to share your prototype with the group, and then they will give you feedback based on the accessibility principles we've learned this week, and you will do the same. You'll create an accessibility review for another peer. And then lastly, you're going to have the whole class discussion, which is you'll select a principle of universal design and apply that to some of your own experiences and your prototype, and just kind of talk about that. And then you will give feedback to another peer about their description of universal principles and their prototype. So you'll have opportunities to reflect this week, really apply accessibility to your prototype, and then turn in a new prototype. And then again, in summary, this whole week will be spent on accessibility, simplicity, and universal design. And then you're going to be applying accessibility principles to your own prototype, and then reviewing another peer's prototype to look for ways that they can improve accessibility. And then you're going to reflect on the context, accessibility, and universal design. And then lastly, just to keep in your mind, this is the design thinking process that we've been continuing to go through. As you prototype, you jump into some of these areas of ideation, empathizing, define, going back and forth between testing and prototype, and now you've been layering on accessibility principles. Thank you for your time, and I wish you a good almost last week of the course. Week 6, we will be doing more reflection on the process that you have followed during this course. So this will be your last prototype that you'll turn in. Thank you.